out those details. 20% growth is what you're looking at, margins at around 15%, but they'll scale up as things improve. And also, going ahead, in fact, they are looking at growth moving up. Maybe some inorganic growth is something that they're looking at. Well, for the time being, though, we'll slip into a short break. On the other side, you come back, we'll continue. Actually, before we go into that break, I think we should get in Ekta. Let's focus on one of those stocks, Lupin, from the pharma space. Ekta joins us to fill us in with more on that. Ekta?
Thanks for that. Well, we've been covering Lupin since yesterday because there is some uncertainty which has now risen over Spiriva generic. So the company did speak to us earlier this morning and did tell us that, in fact, Spiriva generic, which is an inhaler drug expected to be one of the big opportunities for them in this fiscal as well as next fiscal, has received a complete response letter from the US drug regulator. Remember that there was a target action date, which means that they were expected to get some communication from the US FDA with regards to Spiriva generic, and now we do understand, and the company has said that they've got a bunch of queries from the US FDA, which is basically called a complete response letter. The company now, to put it into perspective, how important is Spiriva generic? It is expected to be one of the bigger launches for the company. Market size is $700 million. It is expected to be a limited competition drug for Lupin. So the street is assuming that once it does get launched, or once they do manage to launch it, if in case the CRL queries are answered successfully, etc., then they can make as much as $100 million per year from this particular drug, assuming there are 3 players in this particular market. Now, the drug launch is also expected to eventually aid the margin performance because it will be a high margin drug. Remember that exit margins guided by the company have been around 18%. They said that it can be pulled up to 20% in case there are launches such as Spiriva generic. The company has said they are responding to the CRL. They cannot talk about the details, whether or not it is minor, major in terms of the queries, but the confidence level remains high at this point in time. When is the approval now expected? It is probably expected to still be launched in Q4. That's what the company is still guiding for. So if in case they do get approval by Q4, they can still launch it in Q4. So it will be added into FY23 numbers as well as in FY24 entirely. Now, the approval is dependent on whether or not they manage to answer those queries successfully. There is now lack of clarity on when they could get approval for this particular drug. Remember, the street was hopeful for August 2022. Now, that timeline is pushed down. For some analysts, it was around 20 to 25% of their core earnings estimates in FY23 and as much as 40% for FY24. So that probably takes a bit of a backseat now.
All right, Ekta, thanks a lot for getting us the latest on this. So we'll have to see how things progress on Spiriva generic. And like Ekta pointed out, it is one of the larger launches from the respiratory space. But Ekta, stay on. There was more news that came through on Lupin just a short while ago. They have entered into an exclusive licensing agreement with Japan's IROM group for Denosumab. Tell us about that.
Well, yes, there are multiple pieces of news for Lupin besides Spiriva generic, which have been on the positive front since yesterday, but it really hasn't enthused sentiment. So, for example, I'll just start with yesterday. They did announce that they've received approval for an inhaler drug in the US markets, and that should probably add around $10 to $15 million in terms of total sales. They also will be acquiring 2 brands from Boehringer Ingelheim within the diabetes space. They are already selling these 2 diabetes drugs under license from Boehringer Ingelheim in the Indian market. This acquisition is worth 26 million euros. And lastly, now they just released a note just some time ago that they've entered an exclusive licensing agreement with the Japanese company IROM Group. And this is for a biosimilar in their portfolio, which is used for post-menopausal osteoarthritis. And that is going to be a licensing agreement for basically distributing and registering this particular biosimilar in the Japanese markets. So a large amount of news for Lupin. Street isn't enthused. Their eyes are focused on Spiriva generic.
Okay, Ekta, thanks very much for bringing us up to speed. We're going to take a very quick break now, but as we do that, here's a quick reminder for our viewers. It's that time of the year again. Money Control Pro's Financial Freedom